All right, let's talk about the biggest trailer. So, Dr. Sleep.
Dr. Sleep.
Directed by Mike Flanagan.
Oh boy!
Did you know that, or you didn't know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Mike Flanagan.
I'm not gonna let that affect that.
So, who wants to give their impression first? Who wants to go first?
You can go first.
Okay. I've loved everything Mike Flanagan has done. Don't get me wrong. Even like his worst film, which is Before I Wake, I actually really enjoy. This trailer confused me, and let me tell you why. Because this is an adaptation of the book Dr. Sleep, which is a sequel to Stephen King's The Shining. Stephen King's book and Stanley Kubrick's movie are very different. So, Mike Flanagan has a big task. Are you trying to do a sequel to the movie or to the book? And it kind of seems like he's doing a sequel to the book because at the end of the book, the Overlook burns down. And at the end of the Stanley Kubrick movie, it doesn't burn down. It just kind of like freezes. So, in the trailer, it looks like it's burned down. So, it looks like it's ignoring the Stanley Kubrick film. However, at the same time, it looks like it's not. It looks like it's trying to kind of, at the same time, be a sequel to Stanley Kubrick's film.
Well, just because it doesn't burn down at the very last shot of the movie doesn't mean somebody burns it down like afterwards.
You know, that's true. That's true. I'll give it that. So maybe there is... But it seems like he's trying to do both things. And I feel like that's going to be very tricky. I feel like it's going to be very hard.
Yeah.
You know, because it feels like he's going to try and make a faithful adaptation of the book, but also be a sequel to Stanley Kubrick's Shining. And I'm like, can you do both? Because that's tough, you know. So
I feel like it doesn't really have. For me, it just really didn't feel like the same atmosphere that Shining had.
Right, and I hear that's very similar to the book though as well. The book has a very different atmosphere.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be comparing it to the movie, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure.
Just because like having like a modern Shining or something like that, like something that feels like The Shining. Like I don't think I've ever seen a movie that feels like it.
Right, and see that's the thing. Because in the trailer and I looked this up, Mike Flanagan actually tweeted about it. That's not reused footage. They actually recreated those scenes from The Shining.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you're gonna do that,
don't make
it look like Stanley Kubrick. Just do a whole different thing.
Yes.
You know.
True. But it's so easy to just use that as a blueprint. Yeah,
and that's the thing. I feel like Mike Flanagan loves the original Shining.
Yeah.
Because I mean, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But because Stephen King hates it, he's sort of trying to ride the line of like, I wanna. And him and Mike Flanagan are actually friends. Ooh. So I feel like he's trying to kind of tiptoe that line of like, I don't know if I wanna completely ignore the Kubrick film because I love that film, but at the same time,
and also you'd have to, or you'd at least I feel like want to kind of promote it as a sequel to the movie or something like that.
Yeah, that's definitely. I mean, they even used the theme.
Yeah.
At the
they did. Dude,
the title.
Dude, that got me.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yes.
Again, and I know that we're kind of dancing around it, but my overall perspective on the trailer is like I'm on the fence, so it could go either way.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I also feel like it's kind of weird because Kubrick really never gave us anything to work with. Like, he didn't really explain all that much.
Right.
Except for how the ability of The Shining works, and it feels like the main character of this movie has a lot more understanding of like what's going on.
Yeah.
So that kind of.
And I talked to Brendan about this because Brendan, I'm sure I've told you at some point, you know, The Shining is his favorite movie of all time.
Yes.
Yeah. So I talked to him about it. I texted him. I'm like, "What do you think? Yay or nay?" And he's like, "It's more of an to me." And then we were talking about it, and he said something along the lines of like, first of all, the book wasn't very well received, so the fact that they're kind of making an adaptation out of it is strange. But there are things in there that don't feel like The Shining, like to have kind of like these weird rituals going on where people's eyes like glow is like that's not very shiny.
That I was feeling that too.
Yeah, you know, it might be a byproduct.
That feels
of the book,
more
but
Mike Flanagan.
Yeah. And speaking of that as well, another thing to add is, what do you think of like? This is why I feel like maybe doing Stanley Kubrick flashbacks is not a good thing, because the modern day or whenever it takes place. Mm-hmm. Has a very distinct, different color palette. You know, I know that's very nitpicky, but the color grading is very like stylized. And then it goes to the Stanley Kubrick style, and you're just like, it's kind of jarring, you know. which might work in the benefit of the film because it could be a flashback.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna use like if it's gonna look more grainy for like flashbacks, I think that works.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. But again, it's just, are you trying? He's trying to do both things. It seems like he's like he wants to be a sequel to the book and the movie, and I'm like, how are you going to balance that? How are you going to do that? You know?
Yeah, and if there's any like inside knowledge that I need to know about the first book to watch this, is going to suck because it is very different.
That's the thing. Is like from a general audience perspective, you're going to watch this film with most of the people, unless you're a diehard Stephen King like aficionado. The only backstory to Dr. Sleep that people are going to have is the original Shining movie from Stanley Kubrick. So they're going to go in expecting a straight-on sequel. But then all of a sudden, like, all this weird stuff, this different stuff happens where maybe he mentions something that happened at the Overlook that didn't happen in The Shining. You're like, what?
Yeah, it'll confuse a lot of people.
Yeah. When did the bushes come to life? Which happens in the book. Doesn't happen in the movie. Yeah, you know, like, the Overlook has bushes that are shaped like animals. You know, like how people do that, like fancy places do that. Yeah. In the book, they actually come to life. Oh. And like the tigers like come to life and stuff.
Well,
like
shit.
That. Yeah. So if they mention that in Dr. Sleep, like, yeah, I saw, you know, the bushes come to life.
So it does. I mean, that's kind of cool because I thought that Stanley Kubrick was doing something different when he kind of made it seem like it could be like a kind of a psychosis thing, or if it's like a supernatural thing.
Yeah.
So it sounds like.
Yeah.
Spielberg King was doing the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting because I feel like the difference between Stanley Kubrick and Stephen King's movie and novel is that Stanley Kubrick did make it more psychological and more slow burn, whereas I think because they did make a miniseries out of The Shining, which was more faithful to the book, and it seems a little bit more kind of overtly supernatural and overtly it's less ambiguous of what's going on, you know.
Do you know if it's received well?
The miniseries is not received well.
Oh, okay.
But obviously the book's a classic.
Yeah.
But that's the thing with a lot of Stephen King adaptations, you know, they're always such a mixed bag. But
especially in film.
Yes. And miniseries as well. Like I watched 11/22/63 recently, and it was a good series, but it is you can tell there's so much omitted and so much added. Yeah. You know, to the miniseries.
Is that the one with Franco?
Yeah, James Franco. Okay. There were some really amazing parts, but then there were some really weird moments where I'm just like, what? So I feel like that's just the whole thing about Stephen King. You know? Okay. But, you know, in the original book, he actually uses instead of an axe, he uses like a croquet club.
Really?
Or a cricket. You know, like those, what is that? No, not cricket. Cricket's you know, like the thing where it's like
the croquet club?
Yeah, is it croquet? Where there's like they're on the ball and it's sort of like golf, like putt-putt.
Yeah, I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, he uses a croquet mallet instead of an axe.
Okay, so that's interesting. I mean, like every hotel should have like one of those like fire like axes or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It's
like
hard to find one of those.
An axe is 10 times more frightening than a croquet mallet.
For sure.
So I can see why Stanley Kubrick was like, "Yeah, no, we're making this an axe." Like what? You know?
Yeah, plus if everybody's going to be like leaving they don't want to forget their croquet mallets.
Exactly. Oh my god. So, Dr. Sleep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I'm interested. But it's going to I'm interested. That's all I can say.
Only because The Shining is also kind of one of my favorites.
The Shining is great and I do like Mike Flanagan, so we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. And Rebecca Ferguson is in it and she is prime.
Oh yeah.
So
sweet.